what does Switzerland have to do with anything? Well, one piece of Exelixis's recent news was the approval of its new drug Cotellic in the US. So this drug was approved as a combination therapy with the Swiss company Roche's Zelboraf to treat a specific variation of advanced melanoma. Now, Zelboraf has been on the market already for 5 years. Sales are kind of slowing down a little bit, so I'm sure Roche investors are quite pleased and cheering for this approval, which didn't really come as much of a surprise as the combination was already approved in Switzerland, and a European Union advisory panel also recommended its approval in the EU, so we can probably expect one there sometime in the future as well. So let's dig into this new drug combo a little bit. Todd, can you walk us through some of the highlights of its clinical performance?
Sure. This is an important drug, if only because it offers a new treatment option for patients with melanoma who've seen their disease advance. So, essentially with melanoma, if you catch it early, it's pretty treatable. Unfortunately, when it advances, it gets a little bit more tricky. Now, the FDA has made a lot of efforts to bring a quicker pathway, if you will, to approval for different drugs targeting cancers, including melanoma. This is the most recent, example of that. Cotellic, when used alongside Roche's proven drug, Zelboraf, did indeed boost both the overall response rate. So, did you partially respond to the drug combination? Did you have an overall response? Was it a complete response? It did improve that to 70% from 50% if you were on Zelboraf alone. It also, though, importantly, delayed disease progression. Okay, so if you go into the numbers and you look and you say, okay, well, how many months go by before the melanoma starts to get worse or recurs? And when patients were treated with this two-drug combo, it took about 12.3 months before the disease progressed, where if you were just taking Zelboraf, it was about 7.3 months. So that's a huge improvement in progression-free survival for the two-drug combo versus the monotherapy.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a game-changing drug for a lot of people. I think one question that is really on people's minds right now that Exelixis did weigh in on a little bit is pricing. So Roche actually gets to set the price here, and I would imagine that anybody looking at this drug from a patient perspective is like, oh gosh, what are they going to charge me for to get this drug? So what we've heard so far is that Cotellic is going to be about $6,590 a month. And meanwhile, Zelboraf is currently about $11,000 a month. So if you add those together, you get a combo price of $1,750. That's, of course, $17,500 a month, which is about an 8% discount to a similar treatment available from Novartis, but still looking at a really expensive drug here. Now, of course, if you look at that from an investor's standpoint, the companies are going to be making quite a bit of money. And I've seen sales estimates all over the place for this combination. Todd, what do you believe could be a peak sales estimate?
Right. Well, we have two things that we have to consider here, right? We have, yes, this drug is a big advance for people with tough to treat cases of melanoma, right? So there's the human side of it.
For sure.
As investors and trying to figure out, if there's an investing thesis we can get behind, we have to look at and say, okay, well, can they make money by marketing, developing, and selling this drug? Okay. And that's where we start to get into this area where we're talking about high-priced cancer drugs, absent or in realizing too that we know that paying for cancer treatments, it can be a major burden for patients. So yes, cancer drugs have gotten much more expensive over the course of the last 3 years, far more drugs coming to market with $100,000 price tags. And that's why it doesn't shock me that the companies are discussing numbers around what you just outlined. The bigger question that I have isn't necessarily, is the price high enough to move the needle for these companies? It's more, is the competitive landscape conducive to them grabbing market share and being able to, outmaneuver other drugs that have also been approved for use in patients in the past year. On that measure, I'm not so sure. I think that we'll need to digest this over the course of the next few quarters and see how this plays out, because investors also have to know that Bristol Myers back in September won an approval for using Opdivo alongside its Yervoy in BRAF positive patients. So there's a lot of moving parts to figuring out what the economic, benefit could be to Exelixis, especially given the fact that, Exelixis exercised its rights to, co-promote this drug in the U.S.
Right.
And that means that it won't be receiving royalties on sales. It actually has to pay for half of the marketing expenses that are associated with getting it to doctors and patients. The upside, obviously, being that they'll share in any profit or loss that's generated.
Yeah, and it's really only a 50-50 share.
Two pieces of that puzzle, patient population and use, or volume and price.
Exactly. Yeah. And as it is right now, as you mentioned, since they are sharing in the U.S. profits, they're only getting 50% right now. And that's going to decrease as sales increase, with Roche taking the rest of it. And meanwhile, it's sharing the costs as well for marketing and commercialization. So another thing to consider with all this is, well, okay, could Cotellic be approved elsewhere? And it actually is being studied in other areas. I mean, the advanced melanoma landscape, as you mentioned, is looking pretty crowded already. And there are several other experimental treatments that are hopefully on the way, going through clinical trials and showing some promise. But when you look at some other options that you have for the drug and where it could potentially be another piece of the puzzle. So it's being studied as a combination with another Roche drug, an experimental anti-PD-L1 therapy, and this could potentially be a treatment for solid tumors. So of course, this is still a very early stage type of drug as far as post-approval or late stage trials go. We don't really have any way of saying exactly how much revenue it could bring in, but it's certainly something to keep an eye on. Todd, I'm just curious if you could touch on what else is going on with Exelixis. I mean, this is just one part of their story. What else should investors know if somebody is interested in looking at this stock?
This is an intriguing company because it's got a lot of different irons that are in the fire, but it's also a company that's spending a tremendous amount of money on this research and development programs. You have to really balance the two and say, okay, if these are early stage, label expansion type studies, I don't know whether or not you can put a value on how much those are worth yet. So you have to look at Cometriq, which is approved for medullary thyroid cancer and is generating out sales of about $7 million per quarter. And then you have to look at Cotellic, which has just been approved, and we don't really know what the impact on the top line may be in the next year. I think that investors need to pay particular attention over the course of the next couple quarters, see how this plays out. They also need to be watching to see whether or not the FDA approves Cometriq for use in kidney cancer. Earlier this year, actually last month, the company did submit an application for approval in kidney cancer. That clears the way for an FDA decision next year. If approved, obviously, that now would give the company three different revenue streams, if you will: the medullary thyroid, the melanoma, and then the kidney cancer angle. But again, both the melanoma and the kidney cancer indication are both crowded and competitive fields. So it's unclear to me, how much market share they're going to end up with.
Yeah, I think those are all good points. And I mean, this is a company that is still losing money. I mean, they're expected to be profitable in 2019, but again, those are projections, and that's kind of a long way away. So this is almost, I don't want to say typical, because none of these stocks are necessarily typical, but it is kind of typical for a biotech where it's fairly speculative. It's a pretty risky bet.